I'm going to start this story with the moment everything stopped making sense, because if I try to ease you into it, you won't feel the weight of the silence that hit us that morning. The kind of silence that doesn't come from nature, but from the human mind, realizing it's suddenly on its own. When I opened the tent and saw that our mountain guide, someone we trusted with every step, every direction, every decision, was simply gone. No sounds, no warning, no explanation. It felt like the world around us had shifted a few centimeters out of place, barely enough to see, but more than enough to feel. And then we saw the footprints. That's when the ground really began to shake beneath us. People love watching survival stories. They think they'll react calmly, logically, maybe even heroically. I used to be one of those people. But nothing prepares you for waking up above 3,000 meters, in freezing thin air, with clouds crawling between the slopes like living things, only to realize the one person who knows the mountain better than anyone has abandoned camp without touching his pack, his stove, or even his radio. Nothing prepares you for the moment you understand you are far from rescue, far from certainty, far from anything except your own fear. My name is Daniel, and what I'm about to tell you happened 2 winters ago in the Corinthian Alps. I wasn't there alone. There were 4 of us, me, my friend Lucas, a married couple named Adrian and Mia, and our local guide, a man named Gregor. He had climbed that mountain range for decades. He lived and breathed those peaks. We trusted him instantly, and maybe that was our first mistake. If you've never climbed in winter, let me tell you something. Mountains aren't quiet. They groan, they crack, they sigh under layers of ice. The wind whistles through stone in a way that sounds almost like a voice if you're tired enough. But that morning, when we stepped out and looked around, the mountain felt mute, like it was holding its breath with us. Gregor's tent was zipped closed from the outside. His backpack was there, his jacket, his boots, but the footprints we found, those shallow impressions dusted with fresh snow, didn't lead from his tent. They circled the camp first, almost as if he had walked around multiple times, confused or maybe listening. Then the steps drifted toward the edge of the ridge, straight into a narrow path that snaked along a sheer drop. We called his name for an hour, our voices bouncing back to us from cliffs. Nothing. At first, we tried to rationalize it. Maybe he'd gone to check conditions. Maybe he'd spotted something unusual. Movement, falling rocks, changing weather. Mountain guides do that sometimes, but not without their gear, and definitely not without telling the group. Still, we followed the prints. What else were we supposed to do? Staying put felt even worse. Those footprints, I still think about them. There was something off in the spacing, uneven, like he'd been unsteady or dragging one foot. And they weren't deep enough for someone wearing heavy boots. I know that sounds strange considering the conditions, but it was one of the first little details that bothered me. I tried to brush it off as wind erosion or drifting powder, but the doubt clung to me like frost. The trail led us to a narrow pass, a natural bottleneck carved by the mountain. Temperatures were dropping quickly, and clouds gathered low, pushing against the ridge like wet cotton. Lucas kept saying we should turn back. Adrian wanted to keep following. I sided with Adrian because something in my chest couldn't bear the idea of leaving our guide, our lifeline, out there alone. But when we reached the pass, everything stopped. The footprints ended. Not faded, not covered, not blown over. They just stopped. Like whoever made them had vanished mid-step. We stood there frozen, staring at the snow as if it would correct itself if we waited long enough. But it didn't. The trail was just gone. Maybe he climbed up the rocks, Mia said, but the rocks were coated in frost so smooth and untouched that even a bird would have left a mark. We weren't dealing with a slip or a fall. We weren't dealing with a natural disappearance. Something else had happened. Something we didn't understand yet. That's when we heard the sound. A hollow thump muffled by distance, followed by another. We turned toward a ravine carved into the side of the mountain. Snow shifted down its walls in quiet cascades. Could be him, Adrian whispered. Could be. Or could be the mountain playing tricks. Cold, altitude, and fear don't just affect your judgment, they twist it. We decided to return to camp and regroup. The weather was worsening, and wandering blind would only make it easier for something to go wrong. By the time we got back, visibility was sinking fast. Fog slithered through the tents like smoke. And here's something I haven't told many people. When I passed Gregor's tent again, the zipper was half open. I know we had all seen it closed that morning. I had even tugged on it myself. Inside, the air felt oddly warm, as if someone had just been there. But nothing was disturbed. We stayed close together for the rest of the day, speaking little, each of us trapped in our own spiraling thoughts. I kept replaying the footprints in my mind, the way they circled us, the way they ended abruptly. Something about them felt intentional, not random wandering, almost like he'd been checking the perimeter, watching something, or someone. By sunset, the fog thickened into a moving wall, and the mountain grew quiet again. Too quiet. Even the wind seemed to stop against the invisible cold. I remember telling Lucas that the silence felt pressurized, like the air before an avalanche or thunderstorm. But nothing happened. Not then. Instead, the night brought something far worse. Around midnight, I woke to a faint crunch of snow outside my tent. At first, I thought it was Lucas going to relieve himself. But the footsteps were slow, deliberate, and too close. They stopped just inches from my tent flap. I held my breath, waiting for someone to call out, but there was nothing. Only the whisper of fabric shifting slightly as if brushed by a hand. I forced myself to unzip the tent and look outside. That moment is burned into me. There were footprints, fresh ones, right beside my tent. They weren't ours. They weren't the guides from earlier. They were new. And they led toward the edge of the camp, disappearing into the fog like an invitation we weren't meant to accept. I woke the others. We gathered by the dying fire pit, shivering both from cold and from something deeper. The prints were real to all of us, a perfect line walking straight out of the campsite as if whoever made them had come specifically to inspect us. "Do you think it was Gregor?" Mia asked. But the footprints didn't match his size. They were smaller, lighter, almost like someone barefoot had stepped gently across the snow, yet left crisp impressions that should have required far more weight. That was the moment my fear turned into something else. A creeping realization that whatever was happening to us was not simply a lost guide, a wrong turn, or a storm closing in. Something was watching. Something was moving around us when we couldn't see it. Something that didn't behave like a normal human in the cold. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. By dawn, the fog lifted slightly, enough that we felt safe enough to pack our things. No one wanted to stay another night. The plan was to descend to the lower base before weather worsened. But then we heard something that made our blood run colder than the wind ever could. A voice calling for help, from somewhere high above us. It sounded like Gregor. Tired, weak, echoing through the natural amphitheater of peaks. We froze. "It's impossible," Lucas said. "Sound wouldn't carry like that unless he was right above us and we would see him." But we saw nothing except swirling patches of fog. The voice called again, closer this time, urgent. We followed the sound uphill, against every instinct that told us to go down. The climb grew steeper and the snow slick, but that voice kept pulling us. I don't know if it was desperation, loyalty, or fear of the unknown that drove us. Maybe all of them. Eventually, we reached a narrow ledge overlooking a chute full of loose snow. The voice called again, and this time it sounded like it was coming from directly below us. But the chute was empty. And then we saw it. A single footprint on the ledge. Just one. Not part of a trail. Not belonging to any logical approach. It was the same size as the prints we saw near our tents. Small. Bare. Deep enough to suggest someone had stood there, watching us approach. That's when Mia began to cry. Not loud, just silent tears freezing on her face. And I understood exactly how she felt, like the mountain itself had eyes. We backed away slowly and made a unanimous decision. Forget the voice. Forget Gregor. Forget everything except getting down alive. But the mountain, it wasn't going to let us leave easily. As we descended, the fog thickened again, rolling over the slope like a living blanket. We tied ourselves together with rope for safety, but visibility dropped to barely a few feet. Every rock suddenly looked unfamiliar. Every shadow felt like it had intent. The wind picked up, carrying what sounded like fragmented whispers between gusts. I tried telling myself it was just turbulence echoing through the rocks, but the patterns were too rhythmic, too purposeful, like someone was walking parallel to us just beyond sight. At one point, Lucas stopped and whispered, "Someone's behind us." We all turned. No one was there, but new footprints were appearing in the snow. Not ours, not matching the rope line. They materialized behind us as though someone unseen was pacing, waiting for us to keep moving. We didn't speak another word for the next hour. Fear took our voices the same way altitude took our breath. By the time we reached a flat shelf where we could rest, Mia collapsed to her knees. Adrian dropped his pack to help her, and that's when he saw something sticking out of the side pocket. Something none of us had put there. A small strip of torn fabric, thick, dark, the kind used for heavy alpine jackets. Gregor's jacket, except none of us had seen him wearing anything torn before. And the fabric was cold, not ice cold, but body cold, like it had been pressed against skin not long ago. We were no longer trying to solve a disappearance. We were trying to escape something that had woven itself into our path, something that moved faster than us, something that watched in ways we couldn't explain. But the next moment, that's when everything truly spiraled. We heard footsteps approaching through the fog, slow, careful, coming directly toward us even though we still saw nothing ahead. The crunch of snow grew louder, closer, 2 steps, then another, then silence. And when the fog shifted just slightly, we finally saw a silhouette, shorter than Gregor, narrow shoulders, still facing us. "Hello?" I called, though my voice was barely a whisper. No answer. The silhouette tilted its head, slow and unnatural, like it was studying us. Then it stepped forward, one slow foot. Then, the silhouette stepped forward and every one of us stopped breathing. It wasn't rushing toward us. It wasn't running or lunging or calling out. Nothing like that. It was simply walking with a slow, almost thoughtful movement, as if trying to make sure we really saw it. That somehow made everything 1,000 times worse. Fog shifted around its legs first, then its torso, revealing more of the figure. It wasn't Gregor. The height was wrong. The posture was wrong. And it wasn't wearing a jacket or even proper clothing, just something loose, torn, and dark that clung to its frame. The kind of thing no one would ever wear at that altitude if they wanted to survive the night. Then the fog thinned just enough for us to see the feet. Bare, red from cold, leaving the same footprints we'd been following, the ones that circled our camp in the night, the ones that appeared behind us on the descent. Mia let out this quiet, strangled sound. Pure instinct, pure terror. Adrian stepped in front of her, but he was shaking so badly that the rope tied between all of us trembled with him. Who are you?" Lucas called out, though he sounded like he already regretted asking the question. The figure stopped only a few steps away from us, close enough that if we reached out, we could almost touch it. Its head tilted again, very slowly, like a curious animal trying to understand what it was seeing. The fog thickened again, wrapping around its shoulders, obscuring its face. But in one split second, I thought I saw eyes, wide, reflective, almost shining. Not glowing, just catching light in a way that didn't make sense for the dim conditions. "Gregor?" Mia whispered, desperate, clinging to any explanation that made this situation less impossible. But the figure shook its head. Not left and right, not a refusal. Shook its head like something trying to get used to its own body, like a person unsure how to mimic human gestures. Then it turned away from us, not toward the mountain, not toward a safe path, but toward a narrow, jagged slope that dropped fast into a section we all knew was unstable. Snow hung there in delicate tension, the slightest vibration enough to send everything crashing down. The figure started walking toward it, bare feet pressing into ice so cold it should have frozen skin instantly. We watched in paralyzed horror as it stepped onto the unstable snow, and nothing happened. The surface didn't give way. No cracks, no rumble, nothing. It kept walking until fog swallowed it again, leaving only a trail of shallow prints behind. And then, seconds later, a voice echoed across the ridge. "Help, please." The same voice we heard earlier, Gregor's voice, except this time it came from the opposite direction. We all turned. The fog shifted again, revealing a shape slumped against a line of jagged rocks. A human shape, heavy clothing, a familiar outline. Lucas rushed forward first, slipping in the snow, yelling Gregor's name. Adrian and I followed while Mia stayed behind, too shaken to move. When we reached the figure, I knew immediately it was him. Or at least, it looked like him. His jacket was torn, his face pale, lined with frost. But he was breathing. His eyes fluttered open when I touched his shoulder. "Don't follow it," he whispered. We looked at each other, dread pooling in our stomachs. "What is it?" Adrian asked. "Who is it?" "We saw something up there." Gregor grabbed my wrist with surprising strength for someone barely conscious. "It copies," he rasped. "It follows paths, footprints, sound, light, movement. Don't let it near camp again." His breathing faltered. His head dropped forward. He wasn't gone, just unconscious again. Weak, but alive. We needed to get him down, now. We carried him as carefully as we could, descending slowly, but time was working against us. Fog thickened again, the sun dimming too fast. The mountain was closing in, and the wind kept shifting direction, carrying sounds we couldn't trust. Twice we heard the voice again, Gregor's voice, calling for help, from places he wasn't. The thing was mimicking him, trying to lure us, trying to make us separate, trying to pull us into the fog. The realization hit us like a blow. It wasn't just copying movement. It was copying the one person whose voice would make us follow without hesitation. It was using his voice to hunt us. We kept moving. Every few minutes we checked the snow behind us. Every few minutes new footprints appeared just out of reach. Always the same distance, always the same pacing, like it was walking with us, waiting. By late afternoon, the weather plunged into something far worse. Hard wind rolled down the slope, carrying icy particles that stung our faces. The fog turned orange as daylight fought to stay alive behind it. We were exhausted, dehydrated, terrified, and carrying another human being through terrain that didn't forgive mistakes. Gregor suddenly stirred again. "Stop," he whispered. We halted immediately. "It's ahead," he said. We scanned the fog, but we didn't see anything. Then a shape flickered, that same silhouette, standing perfectly still at the edge of our visibility, waiting. Lucas cursed under his breath. "What does it want from us?" he murmured. Gregor answered weakly. "It learns. It copies. It tries each group differently. Some run, some freeze, some follow it off cliffs, don't react to it, don't acknowledge it, just keep moving." We did as he said, but the thing didn't like being ignored. Not at all. It started walking again, parallel to us this time. Its shape drifting in and out of fog like a mirage. Sometimes closer, sometimes farther, but always there, matching pace with our group. We tried our best not to look at it, but that's easier said than done when something unnatural is studying you meters away. At one point, the fog cleared just enough for us to see its feet again. Bare, frostbitten, but the skin wasn't cracking. No ice, no blisters, no signs of cold damage at all. Just pale, smooth flesh pressing into snow with delicate precision, as if the mountain itself recognized it as something native. And then it stopped. The silhouette froze in place. Slowly, it lifted one hand and pointed downhill, but not toward base camp, toward a ravine, a steep drop, a route that no sane climber would take, a route that would have killed us instantly. It wanted us to follow. Gregor whispered, "Don't look, don't respond." We held our breath and moved forward again, pushing past burning muscles. But the thing wasn't finished. It began imitating footsteps, loud ones, heavy ones, the kind of sound you hear when someone is running up behind you. We didn't turn around. Then it imitated a different sound, something dragging in the snow, something heavier, something unnatural. Still, we didn't look, not until the snow beside us shifted. A fresh footprint appeared, then another, then another. It was walking right next to us now, close enough that I could hear the snow compressing under its weight. I don't know how we kept going. I don't know how we didn't break and run. But Gregor kept whispering, "Keep walking. Don't react. Don't break the path." And we obeyed. Finally, we saw the lower ridge, the last slope before the rescue cabin we'd passed 2 days before. The fog thinned just enough for us to recognize the angle of the rocks. Adrian let out a choked laugh of relief. Mia sobbed behind him, but the footprints didn't stop. They followed us all the way to the cabin door. We got Gregor inside, locked the door, secured the shutters, lit a small stove. We felt safe for the first time in hours. But then, something pressed against the cabin wall, slowly, deliberately, not pounding, not scraping, sliding, as if fingertips were tracing the wooden boards, memorizing every line of the structure. We stayed silent. Gregor motioned for us to extinguish the lantern, so we sat there in darkness listening as something outside circled us. Once, twice, 3 times, then it stopped. And after a long, unbearable silence, footsteps walked away. When the rescue team reached us the next morning, the first thing they asked was why there were footprints all around the cabin coming from every direction. Footprints that didn't match any of our boots. Footprints that circled the entire area like someone had been pacing around for hours. We didn't answer. Gregor never spoke about it again. He left guiding permanently 3 months later. And as for us, we promised never to go back to that range. But sometimes, in winter, when snow gathers in perfect silence and fog rolls low across the slopes, people report seeing footprints that lead nowhere. Footprints that end suddenly like someone vanished into thin air. Some say it's just wind. Some say it's old legends. But I know the truth, because every now and then I still dream of that silhouette standing in the fog, tilting its head, watching, copying, waiting for someone to follow the wrong path. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. It still feels unreal to talk about it, but sharing it somehow makes it lighter to carry. If you felt the tension of this journey, if the mystery pulled you in, or if you enjoy stories like this, consider supporting the channel by liking the video, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who loves intense survival experiences. Your support helps keep these stories alive and helps this channel grow. Thank you again for watching, and stay safe, especially on the mountains.